The threshold was open, and the dark inside it was breathing. Not loud. Not close. Just the slow, patient swell of something drawing air on the other side of a white-painted door set into a canyon wall 100 miles from where any door had a right to be. I stood at the edge of it with a borrowed key sweating in my fist, and the thing that used to be my friend turned to look at me with 2 holes where her eyes had been, and she smiled with a mouth sewn shut, and she waved me forward into the place where the universe keeps its ending. Go and know, the dark said. Or stay. Let me back up. Let me tell it the way it happened, because if I tell it the way it felt, you won't believe a single word, and I need at least one living person to believe me before I take my turn at the doors again. It started with a phone in the couch cushions. I'd been a seasonal ranger at Ebony Gorge for 2 months by then, long enough to stop asking the questions that made the permanent staff go quiet, and not long enough to understand why they went quiet. You won't find Ebony Gorge on a map. I've looked. I worked there for an entire season and I still couldn't tell you which state to drive to, only that people arrive without meaning to and leave without remembering, and the ones who stay learn to keep their theories in their teeth. The phone belonged to Marin. She'd been the first ranger to be kind to me, the one who showed me which trails to wave visitors away from and which cairns not to touch, and then one day the chief told me Marin had quit and driven home, and that was that. People came and went. I'd accepted it. Except there was her phone, wedged down in the cushions of my own couch in the ranger housing, where she'd sat the week before laughing about something I can't remember now. If you quit a job and drive away forever, you take your phone. You tear the cabin apart looking for it. You come knocking on doors. She hadn't. I stood in my little cabin turning that cold rectangle of glass over and over, and a thought arrived that I didn't want. Something happened to her. And the only people who might tell me what were the 2 I was most afraid of, Della, the chief, who could end a sentence with the words, body bag, and make you genuinely uncertain whether she was joking. And Sable. Sable was the one everyone warned me about. She spent her days alone in the backcountry, walking the desert brush in a silence she'd chosen on purpose, and she answered questions with the bare minimum of words, like each one cost her something. The other rangers said she was cold. I'd started to suspect she just knew more than the rest of us, and that knowing had hollowed something out of her. I chose Sable. Then I changed my mind and walked toward Della's cabin. Then I changed it back. I must have crossed that clearing 3 times in the moonlight, the dry grass crunching under my boots, my own indecision pinballing me back and forth until the door banged open. Just knock already, Sable said. It's excruciating watching you play pinball through the window. She let me in only as far as the doorway. The cabin behind her was dark and spare, a single lamp, a cot, the smell of cold ash and sage. I held up the phone like an offering. This is Marin's. I found it at my place. But you said she quit. She must have left it. She'd have come looking. You know she would. You don't drive out of a place forever and leave your whole life sitting in a couch cushion. I watched her face. Who told you she left? Chief did. Mentioned it yesterday. Let me guess. Late at night. Nobody else around. Sable's eyes didn't widen, that would have been too much feeling for her to spend, but they sharpened, the way a knife sharpens, all the softness ground off the edge. She'd heard about my first night on lockup duty. She knew about the thing that had worn the chief's face and walked the tree line where the real chief couldn't have been. She understood exactly what I was saying. She didn't say anything at all. She just shut the door behind her, hard, and strode off into the trees with that long backcountry gait, and I trailed after her like a stray dog because I didn't know what else to do. "Where are we going?" "Not you," she said, and the woods took her. I should have gone home. I had the day off. But you don't go fishing after you realize someone you cared about has vanished into a place that eats people, so I sat on a flat rock at the edge of the trees and I waited, and I watched the canyon light go from gold to bruised to black. A strip of stars came out overhead, impossibly bright, more stars than I'd ever seen anywhere with a name. About an hour after full dark, Sable came back out of the woods. There was dirt on her cheek. Her boots were caked with something I didn't let myself look at too closely. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Anything?" I asked. She walked past me toward her cabin. I followed, aware of how pathetic I looked and not caring even a little. "So what now? Do we start a search? Look for the White Chapel?" I'd heard the stories about the White Chapel, none of them made sense, all of them ended badly. She reached her door. "We hope she never comes back." I jammed my boot in the gap before she could close it. "What does that mean?" Sable looked at me then, finally, and her dark face had gone darker still, like a cloud had passed behind her eyes and decided to stay. "It means your friend is good and gone. Not missing. Gone. The best thing she can do now is stay away, and the best thing you can do is stop looking. It'll be worse if she visits." "How do you know she's gone?" "You couldn't have searched the whole park in 2 hours." She wiped at the dirt on her cheek and only smeared it. "I don't need to," she said. "I already found her." And then she pushed my boot out of the way with her own and shut the heavy door, and I heard the bolt slide home, and I stood in the dark with my heart going and no idea, none, what she meant. She avoided me after that. Not cruelly. Sable was never cruel, I'd figured that much out. It was more like there were things sitting behind her teeth that she couldn't bring herself to say, not because they were secrets but because she didn't think I could survive hearing them. Or maybe she didn't think she could survive saying them out loud. I tried to let it go. I really did. I threw myself back into the work, the visitors, the trails that existed and the ones that didn't. I gave the same conservation lecture 40 times, stay on the path, pack out what you pack in, please don't climb the cairns. I drank too much coffee. I told myself Marin had moved to Arizona and would text me from a normal phone any day now. It almost worked. About a week later, I stopped needing it to. The knock came right as I was falling asleep. I lay there in the dark, not sure if it had been real or the first frame of a dream. Then it came again, 3 slow knocks, knuckles on wood, unhurried. I pulled on a shirt and a hat and opened the door. Nobody. I leaned out into the cold night air and looked left, looked right. The clearing was empty. The trees stood black and still. No teenager sprinting away laughing, and anyway, we were a half-mile from the nearest campsite, deep in staff housing, and this was Ebony Gorge, where malicious and real tend to be the same word. I didn't go back to bed. I stood at the doorway, one hand on the frame, and I waited. A few minutes later it came again. The pounding. Louder. I yanked the door open mid-knock, nothing. Cold crawled up from my toes to the back of my neck and sat there. The 3rd time, I didn't open the door. The 4th time, I genuinely considered crawling under my bed like a child and waiting for the sun. The 5th time, I decided I'd make a run for it. Nobody would be at the door anyway, that was the pattern, and Sable's cabin was only a sprint across the clearing. She'd know what this was. I gritted my teeth. I counted to 3. I threw the door open, and she was there. Where I was certain the clearing had been empty, a shape stood against the trees. Marin. Still as a statue. Her face slack and expressionless, washed gray by the moon. She raised one finger. She curled it toward herself, follow, and then she turned and walked into the woods. This is how it ends, I thought. You follow her, and you die. I knew the rules. I'd seen the movies, read the stories. You follow the figure into the dark and it turns out to be the killer. You split off from the group and that's the one the thing in the woods takes. Following Marin into the trees in the middle of the night was, without any question, the single stupidest thing a person could do. And yet, if I went to get Sable, she'd talk me out of it. She'd lock me in her cabin if she had to. And then I'd never know. Whatever this was, whatever had happened to Marin, whatever lived behind the doors in the canyon walls, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering. I've never been able to stand wondering. I went after her. My clip-on flashlight thumped against my thigh with every step, but I didn't turn it on. Marin stayed just at the edge of the moonlight, a pale smudge between black trunks, and I followed her by that alone. Sometimes she'd vanish, slip behind a tree and simply not come out the other side, and I'd walk blind for 10, 20 seconds, my hands out in front of me, my breath loud in my own ears, certain this was the moment something closed its hand around my throat. And then I'd catch the moon on her shoulder again and stumble after. She never once turned around. Underfoot, leaves and dead weeds snapped and crunched. I was breaking every principle I lectured visitors about, walking on untrampled ground, crushing whatever small living thing slept in the duff, leaving footprints where no path was ever meant to be. I didn't care. I'd stopped caring about almost everything except the pale shape ahead of me and the question burning a hole in my chest. Above the canyon, that brilliant ribbon of stars wheeled slowly. The air smelled of cold stone and crushed sage and, underneath it, something faintly sweet and wrong, like fruit a day past ripe. Have you ever felt like something was watching you, not the prickle on your neck that turns out to be nothing, but a certainty, a weight, a sense that the dark itself has turned its attention to you? Tell me in the comments. Because that's what those trees felt like that night. Not empty. Attentive. When I finally broke out of the tree line, it was into a flat sandy clearing that ended at the sheer canyon wall. And there, where Marin had stopped, she sat down cross-legged in the sand, facing the rock, perfectly still. In the wall in front of her was a door. Open. It was an ordinary door. That's what made it obscene. A modern door, white painted, with 3 frosted glass panes set symmetrically into it. The kind of door you'd see on a tract house in any suburb in the country, the kind I'd had on my childhood bedroom, the kind they sell in rows at a hardware store under fluorescent light. Set into raw red canyon rock that had stood there for 10 million years. And beyond the threshold, nothing. Not shadow. Not a cave. A blackness so complete it seemed to drink the moonlight that fell across the sill. I stood at the edge of the clearing and I waited. Nothing came out. Nothing went in. The dark just breathed, slow and even, and Marin sat in front of it like a worshipper. I don't know how long I stood there. An hour. The whole night. Time stopped meaning anything in that clearing. Eventually Marin rose, smooth and boneless, and drifted forward into the open dark, and the door swung shut behind her without a hand to push it. Click. I went home as the sky was going gray. I told myself I'd never go back. She came knocking the next night. And the next. Some nights it took 5 or 6 rounds of pounding to wake me. Some nights I answered on the first knock. Eventually it was easier to just not sleep, to sit curled against the frame of my bed, fully dressed, my flashlight clipped on, waiting for the invitation I knew was coming. I never once said no. I don't think I could have said no by then. Following Marin into the woods to sit before that open door had become the only fixed point in my life. And nothing ever happened. That's the part one can't make people understand. There was no white chapel with its windows blowing out. Nothing tried to climb through the threshold and drag me in. Night after night I sat in that cold sand braced for the chalice to crack, the glass to shatter, the vase to topple from its pedestal, for the event, and it never came. Nothing was hunting me. Nothing wanted me. There was only the routine, the knock, the walk, the sitting, the door swinging shut, the gray walk home. The changes were so gradual that I didn't notice them for a long time. Marin's hair began to darken. Her blonde waves dulled, then shadowed, then went black as oil. They straightened. They grew. Within a couple of weeks they hung past her knees, dragging in the dust when she walked, pooling around her like spilled ink when she sat. Her mouth began to stretch. The corners crept back along her jaw, farther than a mouth should go. And then one night I saw the threads, fine dark stitches, drawing her lips together, tightening a little more each time I looked, until her mouth was a sewn seam across the lower half of her face. Her eyes went last. They sank, and darkened, and then they simply weren't there anymore. She faced the door with 2 black, empty sockets, and somehow I knew she was still looking. Sable's words came back to me every single night. We hope she never comes back. It'll be worse if she visits. She'd been right. I knew she'd been right. And I went anyway, because by then it wasn't curiosity. Curiosity is a clean thing, a bright thing. This was a hunger. It had teeth in me and it was eating me from the inside, and I let it. I dragged through my days gray and shaking. The coffee stopped touching it. I'd catch myself standing in the middle of a sentence to a visitor, no idea what I'd been saying, the line between the waking world and the door clearing gone soft and porous. I watched myself wasting away in the mirror and I couldn't stop. The visits were draining something out of me that doesn't grow back, and I went anyway. Every night. I went. Eventually, somebody else noticed. I told you to let her go. It was the first voice that had ever broken the silence of that clearing. In front of me Marin sat motionless, black hair pooled around her, sockets fixed on the door. I didn't turn around. I knew the voice. Care to join? I said. You shouldn't be here. Sable came and stood beside me, looking at the thing that had been our friend. I'm aware. Why do you think I never told you? For a while neither of us spoke. Far off in the canyon, a gust of wind shivered the tops of the trees, but it died before it reached us. I noticed that, then. The wind never came into the clearing. Not even the wind would go near the doors. How did she get like this? I asked. She followed the last person, Sable said. I didn't ask what that meant. I think I already knew. You have to let this go, she said. I know. I don't think I will. She was quiet a moment. Then, is this because of her? It's too late for Marin. Her eyes are gone. If we were ever going to save her, not Marin, Sable said. Claire. The name went into me like cold water. I turned and stared at her. How do you? We do background checks. Della has me help. Simple stuff, registries, a Google search before we hire anyone. Your name came up. There were a dozen news articles about the accident. She paused. She was your fiancé. If this story is keeping you up, if you've been holding your breath for the last few minutes the way I'm holding mine just telling it, subscribe. We post new horror here every single night. You won't sleep, but you won't be alone in it either. I didn't answer Sable. So she kept talking, which I'd never once seen her do. For the first time since I'd met her, she was the one filling the silence. You need closure about the doors, she said, because you never got closure about her. That's it, isn't it? She died, and you can't figure out how to put it down. So you've decided that if you can solve Ebony, if you can understand what's behind those doors, then maybe you can finally let go of what happened to Claire. I looked at the black-haired thing sitting in the sand. I thought about a hospital corridor, and red and white lights turning, and a sound I still hear when it's quiet, the long flat tone at the end of everything. In front of us, Marin rose. She walked to the door and stepped through, and it pulled shut with the softest whisper of a click. Sable waited a while longer. Then she left. Eventually, so did I. She started joining me after that. Not every night, but enough that I stopped being startled when she settled into the sand beside me. She never tried to drag me away. She never threatened to tell Della. Most nights she didn't speak at all. But we both understood that her being there was a kind of guardrail, a hand on my collar, the only thing keeping me from doing something I couldn't take back. One night, with a cloud sliding across the moon and the clearing going briefly pitch black, I told her about Claire. I was going to call it off, I said. It was good at first. We had fun, real fun. But after the ring, she changed. Or maybe she stopped hiding. There was this cruelty in her I hadn't seen. She'd twist things, then cry when I named what she'd done, cry until I was the one apologizing. If I went an hour without giving her my whole attention she'd get cold, then loud. She broke a lot of dishes. I swallowed. She wasn't evil. I want to be fair. But she wasn't good, not for me, not for anyone. I was going to end it. The week of the accident. And then, well. You read what happened. The cloud moved. Moonlight slid back across the hard plains of Sable's face. Afterward, her family wanted to keep me close. Sunday dinners. Photos on the wall. They had no idea what I'd been about to do, and the truth is, neither do I. Not really. I never got to the last page of it. Somebody tore it out. And I'm just wondering, Sable said. Wondering. She was quiet for a long moment. Then you'll have to decide, she said. If you keep coming, one night Marin will offer you a choice. The same one she was offered. You can go, and you can no. Or you can stay. But you have a guess, I said. I gestured at the clearing, the wall, the door. You have to. Some theory. Tell me you don't have a theory about what's on the other side. Can't I stay and know? Sable stood and brushed the sand from her knees. I have my theories, she said. But they're mine. She didn't come with me again after that. At the end of the next week, it happened exactly as she'd said. Marin wasn't Marin anymore. She wasn't even shaped like grief now. She was a figure of pure black, edges drinking the moon, her skin and clothes and the very black of her hair all gone to the single color that I think will be the last color, the one that's left when the stars have all burned out and the universe finally stops. The only human thing left was that sewn slit of a mouth. That night she didn't sit. She walked straight to the door. And just before she stepped through, she did something she had never done. She turned around. She smiled at me with that stitched and ruined mouth. I felt it more than saw it, and she lifted one black hand and waved me forward. And this time, when she passed through, the door stayed open. Go and know, the dark breathed. Or stay. I walked toward it. The sand pulled at my boots. And in my head the lights were turning again, red and white, and there were people shouting, and that long flat tone, and a sterile room, and a question I'd carried for 2 years like a stone swallowed whole. What would she have said, if I'd gotten to the last page? What was she, really? Who was I about to leave? The blackness beckoned. The end of the book. The final page, right there, just past the sill. All I had to do was step through and I would know, not just about Claire, but about all of it, about the doors and the gorge and what waits on the other side of the thing we're all walking toward anyway. I stood on the threshold. The dark exhaled against my face, and it was warm, and it smelled like the inside of a closed room where something has been waiting a very long time. What would you have done? I still wonder, to this day. I think most people tell themselves they'd step back. I'm not sure most people would. I reached out. And I shut the door. I touched only the handle. I pulled it closed against the warm breathing dark, and the latch caught with a click that sounded, in that silence, like a gunshot. Then I took the key out of my pocket, the heavy iron key I'd borrowed weeks ago from the ranger station, the one I've been carrying every night without ever once admitting to myself why, and I slid it into the lock. I turned it. The last week of my seasonal contract, Della called me into her office. That wasn't strange in itself, she'd been doing exit interviews with all the seasonals. But the moment I sat down across her desk, I could feel that this was something else. Well, she said. Well, I said. She clicked her pen against the desk. Clicked it again. One of my permanents is leaving at the end of the season. I've tried to talk them out of it. They're set on it. We'll need a replacement. You're asking me to stay. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right. Sorry. But, yes. Against my better judgment, I'm offering you a trial as a permanent ranger at Ebony Gorge. One of the others seems to think you'd be a good fit. Sable said that. It doesn't matter who said it, but it was Sable, right? If you don't shut up, I'm rescinding the offer and you leave here in a body bag. I shut up. I took the job. Ebony Gorge isn't like other national parks. We're smaller, for one. One campsite. A handful of rangers. Our visitors almost never come back, and the few who do, we have to gently steer away from trails that don't appear on any map, and warn off the 10-foot cairns they'll find standing in the backcountry like something is keeping count. There are doors in the canyon walls, every shape, every size, every style, scattered through the rock like the place is a house and we're living inside its walls. Every quarter moon, when the moon is split clean in half, we take our turns walking out to lock them. There are 100 theories about what Ebony Gorge is. The hikers have them. The staff have them. We laugh about them in the daylight. We whisper them around the fire at night, and then somebody changes the subject. Sometimes, on my turn in the rotation, when the moon hangs in two perfect halves and the canyon forest goes so still I can hear my own blood, a warm certainty settles over me, and for a moment I'm sure I understand it. All of it. What's behind the doors? What happened to Marin? What would have been on the last page of Claire? I'm sure I've finally got it. Most times, I'm not sure of anything at all. The most any of us can do is guess. And those of us who've been here longest, the ones who've stood at an open door with a key in our hand and turned away, were no exception. We've just learned that it's safest to keep our guesses to ourselves. I still carry the key. I still hear the flat tone, some nights, in the silence between the trees. I never did get to the last page. I made my peace with the not knowing, or I tell myself I did, which might be the same thing in the end. Because here is what the doors taught me, the only theory I'll say out loud: there are some books that are better left a few pages short. There are some doors you keep closed not because of what might come out, but because of what you'd become if you walked in. I have my theories about the rest. But they're mine. Subscribe for more horror every single night. And if you want more stories that will keep you up, check out What the Wow Stories for the wildest relationship drama you've ever heard. Link below. Sleep well.